The Gaza Strip is once again engulfed in a devastating cycle of violence. After a fragile 2-month ceasefire crumbled, hopes for a lasting peace were dashed. The region is now grappling with the horrific consequences of renewed hostilities. Israel resumed airstrikes targeting what it claims are Hamas military installations. These strikes have resulted in widespread destruction and a growing number of civilian casualties. The already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza has deteriorated rapidly. Hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties. Essential supplies including food, water, and medicine are in critically short supply. The collapse of the ceasefire and the resumption of violence have drawn international condemnation. World leaders and organizations are urging both sides to exercise restraint and return to the negotiating table. However, the situation on the ground remains volatile, with no end to the violence in sight. The conflict's resurgence underscores the deep-seated tensions and the urgent need for a just and lasting solution. Until that is achieved, the people of Gaza will continue to suffer the devastating consequences of this protracted conflict. The human cost of this latest eruption of violence in Gaza is staggering. Thousands of innocent civilians, including a disproportionate number of women and children, have been caught in the crossfire. Hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of casualties, with many facing shortages of essential medical supplies. The targeting of residential areas has led to harrowing scenes of devastation. Families have been torn apart, their homes reduced to rubble. The psychological trauma inflicted on children who have witnessed unspeakable horrors is immeasurable. The international community is grappling with the scale of the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Aid agencies are working tirelessly to provide essential assistance, but their efforts are hampered by the ongoing violence and the Israeli blockade. The situation demands an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded access for humanitarian aid to reach those in desperate need. The stories emerging from Gaza are a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. Every statistic represents a life lost, a family shattered, and a future uncertain. The world cannot stand idly by as this tragedy continues to unfold. The international community has responded to the escalating violence in Gaza with a mixture of condemnation and calls for action. World leaders have expressed grave concerns about the mounting civilian casualties and the deteriorating humanitarian situation. The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire and an independent investigation into potential war crimes. Human rights organizations have accused both sides of violations of international law. They argue that the indiscriminate targeting of civilians and the collective punishment of the entire population of Gaza through the blockade are unacceptable. Protests have erupted in cities around the world, with demonstrators demanding an end to the violence and a just resolution to the conflict. Despite the widespread condemnation, a lasting solution seems as elusive as ever. The international community remains divided on how to address the underlying political issues that fuel the conflict. The absence of a unified and resolute response only emboldens the parties involved, perpetuating the cycle of violence. The need for a coordinated international effort to broker a ceasefire and revive the peace process is more urgent than ever. The world cannot afford to turn a blind eye to the suffering of the Palestinian people or the volatile situation in the Middle East. The current crisis in Gaza is a stark reminder of the urgent need for a just and lasting peace in the region. The cycle of violence, punctuated by brief periods of fragile ceasefires, has brought unimaginable suffering to both Palestinians and Israelis. The international community must recognize that there can be no military solution to this complex conflict. A sustainable peace can only be achieved through dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to addressing the root causes of the conflict. This includes ending the Israeli occupation, lifting the blockade on Gaza, and finding a just solution for the Palestinian refugee crisis. Furthermore, it is imperative to address the underlying issues of poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity that fuel extremism and violence. The path to peace will be arduous and require difficult compromises from all parties involved. However, the alternative, continued bloodshed and suffering, is simply unacceptable. The international community must act decisively to support a renewed peace process, one that prioritizes the human rights and dignity of all people. The people of Gaza, like all people, deserve to live in peace and security. They deserve a future free from fear, violence, and oppression. It is time for the world to come together and demand an end to the conflict and a commitment to building a just and lasting peace.